All right, and we're back here on Couch Coach Live. We have an emergency podcast episode this week here on Couch Coach Live. We was here with you last night, but we had to have an emergency podcast because there is a coaching change at VCU. So we definitely had to bring in our guy. What's going on, Ben? It's WCVC, right?
WVCW, the student radio at VCU.
Yes, indeed, my guy Ben. What's going on, Ben? How you doing?
Happy to be here. Happy to talk about the new coach of the VCU men's basketball program. And anything else we got in store here?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, we got a definitely great show for you here, lined up here as I deemed it as the emergency podcast. So obviously, we'll dive into a few topics today. We'll talk about obviously Phil Martelli Jr.'s press conference today that happened. Our thoughts and expectations for the upcoming 2025-2026 season, which that sounds really crazy to think 2026, but hey, it is what it is. We'll talk about expectations, the latest in the transfer portal as of 6:10 Eastern Standard Time here on Thursday, March 27th. So if anything happens after you hit, after this live episode, this is up to date transfer portal news for VCU as well. And then we'll talk to Ben. He had so many great moments this year. We'll talk to Ben about his top 5 moments of the VCU season that just transpired, and we'll talk a little Ryan Odom to close out our show. So what we're gonna do? We're gonna kick our intro, and we'll be right back here on our emergency episode on Couch Coach Live. We'll be right back. Yes, and we're back here. And my bad, Ben, and it was on the ticker for the station. I charge it to my head, not to my heart, Ben. But
you are good.
Once again, we are back here. We are back here on our emergency episode here on Couch Coach Live, and we talk about pretty much the hiring and the press conference today from the 14th coach in VCU men's basketball history, and Phil Martelli Jr. So we'll talk about just your overall thoughts on today's press conference.
Yeah, this all moved pretty quickly. I thought, obviously, there's a term called winning the press conference. I think that Coach Martelli Jr. did that. Martelli Sr. was in attendance at the Siegel Center. Maybe 100 or 200 fans in attendance. It was a good time this morning at the Siegel Center. But Phil Martelli, you can tell how passionate he is about family, about winning, about culture, but more importantly, building great men, not only on the court, but off the court too. So I was really impressed with how Phil Martelli Jr. spoke at the podium.
Yeah, I agree. It was a great recall. I just love all of it. Just the fact of, even I know when he mentioned about him losing in that summer league when he was in high school, coaching elementary kids, and how that loss, like that type of stuff. I always like those little small stories, like the recall, and that's kind of one of the things that kind of helped build his character. And I think that's another thing too. Like you said, I just love the fact how he really encompassed everybody. Like everybody, it was like a situation where it's like he included the community. Mm-hmm. As far as I think, what was the quote that he said? Pretty much that this program belongs to you,
right?
And I think that's one thing too, where you want to have a coach like that, where because we all in the human nature in us always want to be a part of something, and I think he kind of touched, he kind of helped kind of, had that point. And like you said, going back to the family angle, he, thanked his family, his wife, and even going back to the his presser last week, talked about, the sacrifices his family did. I think I forgot, I don't know if it was a sister-in-law or one of them, where they sacrificed their Disney trip to go see him in the tournament. A lot of it too, I think, I even think about sometimes it's kind of relative to even relative experience, like as far as knowing like early on that you're not going to be an athlete. You're gonna go in another direction. And obviously him talking about that really struck with me as well too, because I always thought of having athletic dreams, and I'm 5'9", just like him as well. So I've definitely fell short. I'm to a point where but he like you said, he won the press conference. It's to a point. Yeah, he won it, and I think that's something that you want a guy like that. It's really exciting of what he's gonna build here at VCU. You think about even how he built Bryant. I didn't really realize how Bryant really didn't have much storied tradition prior to, obviously prior to, him coming there as an assistant back in 2017, and then also taking the realm 2 years ago. And this program is perfect for him. And like, once again, Ed hit it out the park. And I think that's another thing too, where the kind of on this presser, everything that he mentioned, what he was looking for, Phil hits every target. I know he talked about championship experience. He talked about having mentorship, and so all of it that encompassed that, and he knocked it out of the park with this hire for sure.
Yeah, you talk about the word community, right? Something that Phil Martelli, he takes a lot of pride in his community. Ed McLaughlin talked about him growing up in Philadelphia. Obviously, Martelli spent some time with the Sixers, went to St. Joe's, his father coached there. But just the fact that like Philadelphia is such a basketball city, they care about their basketball and their sports so much. And then growing up in a basketball family, right? His father, a 24-year head coach in the A-10 with St. Joe's, and then 5 years after that, associate head coach at Michigan. He's been around the Siegel Center a couple of times with ESPN as well recently. But Phil Martelli, really talented as a coach. And then some of the other family members, his wife, his mother, his sister, his brother, who was a member of the VCU staff at one point. So he comes from a basketball family. He knows what it takes to win, but he knows what it takes to build a great program and to build great people and just what it takes to be great both on and off the court.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing where, you talked about it too, as far as being well-rounded, and the teammates. And I think that's another thing too, especially that resonated with me too, because obviously even like having that mode, like as far as, even though I'm not like in the world of athletics, but I look at even like my colleagues in my 9 to 5 as like teammates. I look at people just in general are like my teammates, even though we don't necessarily play a sport, but that angle of, hey, teammates, I love that aspect of it. And I think the beauty thing about with him too, he still have he has a lot of like the recall, and even when you talked about the situation where being as an assistant, them leading, his team was leading in the A-10 throughout the season, then end up losing in the championship game, in the A-10 championship game. So the fact of him not being able to cut the nets still bothers him to this day. And I think that's another thing where he's going to come here and have that ingrained in his mind. I think that's one thing. He's going to come in here with a chip on the shoulder and all that. And I do love the fact that he did also mention this having like trying to create lifelong memories. And like he said, cutting down the nets is a lifetime memory. And obviously, with, what was the 10 days removed essentially from that, that's something that I'll always remember as well too. I know definitely you, Ben, as well.
Yeah.
So
he's not afraid to share his emotions, to talk about his emotions, to tell people how he feels. Right? Like he was clear about that. He was clear about his goals. He said, he dreams a lot in life, but this VCU job isn't something he could have ever dreamed about, right? This is, he thought he was going to be at Bryant University forever. Obviously, a 15 seed in this year's March Madness tournament, lost to Michigan State, but they won the America East. They had a great season, the Bulldogs, coming out of Rhode Island. But he thought he was going to be there forever, and then he shared that with us, right? He's honest, and he's truthful. He's genuine, and that's really the word that he came back to time and time again, right? He wants to build genuine relationships with his players, with his coaches, with the fans, with the media, with everybody, right? He takes the time to learn everybody's name, and feel like you are a part of the community because he is a part of the community.
Yep. And we said that I was like, I love that. Like, as far as being able to create relationships, and that's what it's all about in this life. Create relationships in that type of realm. And I was like, I was going to be like, Ed, you need a middle-aged man with maybe a year and a half of stability left, so, but yeah, man. But yeah, like you said, he won the press conference for me. Like I said, definitely looking forward to, hearing him throughout the off season and also when the season begins. So yeah, we got a good one for sure.
Yeah. I'm excited about Phil Martelli Jr. and just to have basketball greatness around the Siegel Center with his father, with Jimmy Martelli, and not to mention that the entire team from the 2024-2025 season was there, minus Max Shulga. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, and that's one thing too, where that was another thing that I thought was really interesting, yet very hopeful. Going forward. So, and we'll kind of talk about somewhat the portal momentarily about that. Yeah. But yeah, it was good to see those guys, and and I did like the fact that those guys stood up and coach thanked them. And that's another thing too, and that's the thing I even like how he was saying, even because and he's right. If I'm them too, I would have kind of had the same mentality that Coach Martelli was saying, where especially when you're in a coaching change of this nature, it would have been easier for you to kind of go home. Especially, you think to yourself, VCU is a week removed from losing, and then you think this is kind of like the off time for me. This is a time where I maybe just need to reflect on the season that passed, go home, like I said, go to your girlfriend, or just get out of town.
Yeah.
And like you said, and I commend them too for them essentially to still be around. Shooting hoops, just being around campus. Yeah, because it's really easy for you to kind of, to just kind of pack it in and say, hey, I've been at this pretty much since September. Well, really the summer. This should be my time to kind of, do what, just get out of town. And like I said, I do like that he did essentially, brought that up because, a lot of times, and I think that's the thing where the character, when he talked about as far as having character, that's to me, it's like a character in itself where, those guys are still committed to the team despite the uncertainty of what's going on. They're still showing up. And that's what you want. So,
yeah. No, I was really impressed with him. I liked him.
For sure. So, we got to talk about some expectations that we may expect coming into next season. And that's not necessarily saying wins or losses, just what you want to see from this team, even though we don't necessarily, the roster is still, pretty much topsy-turvy in a sense, but just what's your expectations just for the upcoming season?
Well, first of all, we don't know what the team is going to look like. We don't know what the coaching staff is going to look like. We don't know any of that stuff. So it's hard to tell this kind of thing, but for year one of any new regime, new era in a program, it's kind of filling out the vibe, right? It's seeing how the new coach operates, how he recruits, how he does things on a day-to-day or a week-to-week basis, what his games look like, right? He talked to us a little bit about that after the initial press conference today about what VCU fans can expect, from his gameplay on the court with those teams. And the one word he consistently kept using was flow, right? His teams like to play aggressive, to play fast tempo, like to score a lot of points. They were top 25 last year in terms of total points scored per game as a team, about 82 points per game scored, and then top 10 both of his 2 years as head coach at Bryant in terms of adjusted tempo on Kempom. So he really likes to run, really likes to score a lot of points. So I think that'll be something that VCU fans can look forward to. But as for expectations, I have absolutely no idea. We'll talk about players in the portal in a little bit, but I don't know what to expect, right? He won the America East as a 15 seed, and then gained a 15 seed in the NCAA tournament, knocking off the powerhouse in the America East, which was Vermont at the time. So a really good season by him, and we'll just have to wait and see to figure out how his style and his coaching, the mechanics, everything like that translates to the A10.
Yeah, I think my biggest expectation is just going to be the patience. Just make sure that's not necessarily, you do expect. What's the saying? The saying is you expect to hit the moon, but you might fall in the clouds.
Yeah,
type situation. And I think that's fine. I think, like you said, now as we doesn't know how the roster is going to be constructed, and like you said, you really go based on his data with his, as far as I do love like his offense up tempo, also 3-point heavy offense, pick and roll, and then also I like the fact that as far as the positionless basketball, and we'll talk about the portal, there's a lot of positionless guys that are linked to this program but might have hit that portal, but we'll talk about that momentarily.
Yeah. Think about this too, Chris, right? Like we're talking about expectations for next season. The previous season, or still even this season going on with the tournament happening tonight and tomorrow and through this weekend, like VCU ended their season 6 days ago. It's been a whirlwind of 6 days. Like Phil Martelli Jr. wasn't even on the radar 36 hours ago. And now we have a whole new coach in Richmond, talking about roster, talking about what next year could look like. I think that you using the word patience is perfect.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's been so crazy. And like, it's kind of one of the things where it's been a whirlwind. Obviously, coming off the A10 championship, then you guys going to Denver, lose. Friday, the news of Rhino's departure. The weekend, a little crazy. Then the portal hits. Then Twitter was going crazy. VCU Twitter. And I didn't underestimate. I know, obviously, during games, wins and losses, it get a little dicey.
Yep.
But Monday was kind of fun. Monday was fun, yet kind of low key stressful.
Yeah.
Because I was like, all these rumors, nonsense, and then I don't know, for some odd reason, when Zach posted the flight, the airline emoji,
yep,
people went crazy, and it was just like. Well, because first off, it started with the raindrop in the basketball.
Yep.
I decoded. I was thinking because of what Sarah Tibiasu was doing at Maryland, because it was kind of coincided with her hitting that shot. I think she hit that shot like in the fourth quarter in that game.
That game.
That's what I thought it was. It was amazing. It was an amazing game.
45 points for that Alabama star, and they lost.
Yeah, and they lost. And so then that, and then the airline emoji, and then obviously, and then like all of a sudden, everybody just kind of came down the line. As far as I think that John Rothstein,
yep,
John Fanta, who else was on it? So I was like,
you want me to give you a little insight here? So Zach told us today what each of those emojis meant, right?
Okay, yeah.
I don't know if you saw that. He posted online afterwards, but I went up to him today and asked. He said the little water drops in the basketball emoji was to signify like a splash hire. That was supposed to be Richard Pitino, the son of legendary Rick Pitino, who is this close to joining the Rams staff here at VCU, and eventually ended up signing with Xavier. So he struck out and missed on that one. And then the next one was an airplane that you talked about. And that was signifying like they're in air. They're en route back to Richmond. They've got their guy. They know what's happening. He's on the plane with him. I don't know if you saw the video of Ed McLaughlin and Phil Martelli on the plane together. And that's kind of what that was representing. But then the posts with Matt Norlander and John Rothstein, John Fanta, everybody like that was reporting late Tuesday night. Phil Martelli Jr. said to us today that, nothing was decided by then. He was just sitting on his couch in his sweatpants. He was just scrolling the internet. He didn't know that he had agreed to anything. So they kind of jumped the gun on that. And then it was Wednesday morning when everything got situated. So it's been a crazy 24, 36, 48 hours.
Yeah, because I think I reached out to you, what was it, Tuesday?
Yeah, Tuesday night, maybe. Tuesday morning.
And because I knew something was going to brew.
Yeah.
Because obviously they were saying at the time was, 24 to 36 hours. It's like it's imminent.
Yep.
So, it's one thing.
Everybody thought that they were going to sign Patino, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep, and then he went to Xavier, and now you got father and son in the Big East.
Look, and now we're kind of off track for the expectations of 25. So
yeah,
that's kind of how this. But
that's and that's the thing about it, where it's so fast paced. Like you said, I mean, a part of me was thinking, I mean, if you would have told me, if you would have told me maybe in the beginning of the season that we've been wrapping up VCU season on essentially the 27th of March, I'd have been like, well, they should be in New Jersey. They should be in New Jersey playing in the East Regional for a trip to the Elite Eight. I mean, that was my thinking. But like you said, that's just how the cookie crumbles, essentially.
Yes. That's how it goes.
But it's kind of a relief. We can kind of now things get a little normal. Obviously, we got the games going on, but as far as when it comes to VCU news, we can sleep a little bit. The phone won't be going off a little crazy. No alerts. You can kind of just, and then what was funny, huh?
We'll see.
Yes, indeed. So another thing that has really has spiraled. Obviously, we know that the transfer portal, the beginning to start that one was on Monday. So, some movement in the transfer portal. Obviously, guys who are in the portal are obviously Fats, Bell, Brandon Jennings, Luke, and Martin, who are not in the portal. And this is Firm, Obi, and Terrence Hill Jr. And this is as of 6:36, March 27, 2025. So, if anything changes at the replay of this, and they still have the incoming freshmen in the so-called roster with Silas Barksdale and then Jordan Tillery.
Yeah.
What was just your overall thoughts on just this on the portal?
Well, I think that if any player is smart, they go out, they test their options. There's no consequence to them, right? They got to see, first of all, what their monetary value is. See how much they can get in NIL these days. Six figures, 7 figures. Who knows for some of these guys? And then secondarily, like, it's a coaching change. Maybe you want to follow your guy who just went to UVA and keep playing for Ryan Odom, who you just won a championship under. Or maybe you want to decide to go somewhere completely different and sort of have a restart on your career if that's the situation that you want to put yourself in. But I think that for Coach Martelli Jr., the most important thing will be recruiting the guys that are in the portal now, but were on the roster this past season. So that's Brandon Jennings, Luke Bamboy, most specifically, right? Brandon Jennings, Luke Bamboy, both two terrific freshmen, had great years. Luke Bamboy has started for most of the season. Defensive menace down low. But I think if you're Phil Martelli, that's task number one. It's getting Brandon Jennings and Luke Bamboy to buy into the program and the style that you're going to play, and building around them.
Yeah. I agree with you as well. Those kind of the two keys, especially in this offense for Phil Martelli Jr. To have. They'll be especially coming off great freshman campaigns. You look at just the fact of, like you say, you build off them young sophomores when they enter next season. Yeah, and part of me, like you said, with them coming to the press conference, I think that's a good thing. Where at least it's to a point where they will have the conversation, they will have the meetings with Phil, and just to see where they are and instead, and then really want to see kind of now, as especially now with VCU having an opportunity with having NIL money, how that will pan out as well too. So I think that's going to be kind of interesting. All that. But and talking about as far as like positionless basketball, two guys that really jump off of it. We also talked about Luke and also and Brandon, but I look at guys like Bell and Fats. I think they'll be good in this way. They're another one where they're to me the epitome of like kind of that positionless type of ball where they got obviously in stature they could be like your small forward, but they kind of have like guard like type of tendencies. So that's a good thing about that. And I definitely think how Fats will do. I think because obviously I think maybe because the local product from Verona, and then just seeing some of the problems that he's had before, like if you remember, in Odom first year when they went to Disney World. Well, they went to Disney, in that tournament, and when they played Penn State, and he went off. He had like 26 in that game, and you seen that like you would you can see that he can produce at this level, and now and I'm hoping that there will be some opportunity for him in this offense here, and he get some more minutes and kind of see, because he has flashes. Like, and then obviously Michael Bell as well. Michael Bell is another one where he has really stepped up, especially in certain games, especially when in a lot of those games where they kind of needed some energy off the bench. He really helped as well. So
let me tell you what,
it's
man.
gonna be interesting. Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you what. Ram Nation loves Fats Billups. Richmond always gets on their feet anytime that he checks into the game, even if he doesn't score. They are just over their feet, over their head for any source of Fats Billups. So if he finds a way to stick around on this team and likes what Phil Martelli Jr. has to offer him, he knows he's got a fan base there on Broad Street.
Absolutely. And that's the thing where, and I think I think that's what helps galvanize him in the sense where I think if he can get that consistent play, and like you said, even I think when he came in the LaSalle game, you think to yourself, people are still here. And, you think to yourself, and they're just on their feet. And like you said, even in that LaSalle game when they won by 30-something points.
That's one of the ones that they were up by 30, 40 at some time.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the fans stick it out. And in part, they stick it out because they love Fats. They want to see Fats.
Yeah. And like you said, at that time, it was like you would have thought like it would have been an empty place because, like you said, the game was already in the balance. So yeah, and that's one thing too where I really, really hope that this could be a good situation for him, because you think to yourself, he just deserves it too. You think to yourself, 3 coaches, and pretty much in his tenure at this point, if he decides to leave the portal and come back to VCU, it would be his 3rd coach here at VCU if he decides to come back. But yeah. But yeah, and it was funny because a lot of one of the UVA guys was like, they was like, "Oh, we'll take everybody." I'm like, "Nah, y'all can't do that. Nah, y'all not do that." Yeah, we're gonna file an NCAA investigation. We're gonna take it down the street to the governor.
But like I said, it's in the best interest. It's in the best interest of every single student athlete to just see what their options are, right? You got to make the most of your opportunities. You're only in college for 4 or 5 years nowadays. You got to see what's out there, whether it's monetarily making the most for the potential of your career, your personal happiness. We'll see. So Fats Billups, Michael Bell, Brandon Jennings, Luke Bamboye, Martin Carrere. Be interesting to see what happens to all those guys.
Yeah, and Martin is one I was really looking forward to seeing down the line. Now, obviously, had an opportunity to talk to him in October, and I was like, man, I really want to see what he can do.
Yeah, such a nice guy.
Especially as he develop. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sharpshooter from France. He took a red shirt this season.
Yeah.
He is the option. He could follow Odom to Virginia if he wants to. Fit really well in his system, or stick around at VCU and also fit really well in Martelli's system.
For sure.
Sharpshooter.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So, we talked about kind of the future of VCU basketball, but we kind of need to go a little bit back. So we're gonna kind of recap the season. Ben, what were your top 5 favorite moments this season?
So if you ask me to rank them, that's tough, right? There's so many good moments.
Yeah.
VCU won games by 40. They won games not necessarily at the buzzer. They lost games at the buzzer. They cut down nets. They are a heartbreaker in Denver, Colorado to end it. This season was filled with so many moments. My number one has to be being on the floor in Capital One Arena on Sunday, just a couple weeks ago, after VCU defeated George Mason to take home the A10 tournament title after sharing the regular season title with the Patriots in what was an absolute rock fight of a game. VCU, Zeb Jackson, it was Joe Bamacil hitting the clinching free throws at the end right there. Luke Bamboy slowing down Jalen Haynes a little bit. But the Rams, a great matchup stylistically between Tony Skinn and Ryan Odom. That was just a great game all around, and then so much fun to take in all of the joy afterwards between the team, the coaching staff, the media members, and everybody that has put all of the work in all season to come down with that moment right there, lifting up the trophy. Got to talk to some of the players and the coaches after the game myself, which was a lot of fun. So yeah, that's definitely number one for me. And I can give a few more too.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
You go. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give a couple of quick honorable mentions. I really enjoyed the jersey retirement of both Briante Weber and Joey Rodriguez at the Siegel Center. It's apparent how much they care about Ram Nation and how much Ram Nation cares about them. Of course, Briante Weber, coaching overseas now, made the point to come back to VCU around Christmas time. And the Joey Rodriguez, associate head coach at FIU, coming up to Richmond for a weekend game to see number 12 be put into the rafters. So both those games were a lot of fun. Got to talk to those two VCU legends. Deuce just embodies what Havoc was about. He is VCU. I'd say if there are two players that are VCU, it's probably Briante Weber and it's Zeb Jackson. They wear the same numbers, and we can talk about Zeb Jackson in a minute here, but Briante Weber, he was absolutely incredible his time at VCU, and still about a decade later, using his talents overseas and making a career out of himself. I think he just signed with a new team in Barcelona. So congratulations to him. And Joey Rodriguez with the Panthers down in FIU right now. Really cool. He and his whole family just took in the entire moment. So those two are definitely 2 days that will stick with me forever. If we're talking about some more, I think that the game against Fordham mid-January, it was the game that VCU shut the facility off to the fans, right? So it was the water crisis going on in Richmond. No one had water. We don't need to relive that whole thing, but
No.
the athletic department ended up closing the game to outside spectators for the safety of all Richmonders and the community. So it was really just a handful of people in there, even less than the pandemic, some people said, which was really interesting to experience, right? You could have heard every squeak of the shoe, every swish of the net. We sat right courtside. It was really cool. All of the coaches, you could hear them in the timeouts, their plays. screaming on the sideline. So that game was really cool. You could hear the Fordham players trolling the VCU players at the free throw line, which was fun. But yeah, that game will stick out to me. And then the last one I'll mention, just a couple of honorable mentions right here, and then I'll toss it back to you. It is the 41-point victory over the Richmond Spiders to beat your crosstown rival. This is one of the best rivalries in all of college basketball, especially in the Atlantic 10. To beat your crosstown rival is special, right? No matter what it is, when it is, where it is, under any circumstances, that's special. To beat them by 41 points, that's unheard of.
Yes.
That game was absolutely incredible. So I'll give it up for that one. And I said I was almost done. I will give you two more. The VCU against George Mason game. That one was awesome. That was the one home game I was not in the building for this year, but you could tell this. It was palpable what was at stake for that one, right? The two teams, VCU, they've been on a win streak. George Mason, they'd been on a 12-game win streak. So both of the two best in the conference all year clashing at the tip of the top for that Saturday afternoon matchup in the Siegel Center. And then one more. The Peppas, always really, really special to the VCU community and the environment at the Siegel Center. When they were playing the Devil Goes Down to Georgia, I think it was against Davidson, and Luke Bamboy had to hit 2 free throws. Luke Bamboy, not a good free throw shooter, under 50% for the entire year. He nailed both free throws, and the crowd went crazy while he was doing so because the fiddler for the Peppas, the VCU band, just absolutely knocked the performance of Fiddler of Devil Goes Down to Georgia out of the park. That was an incredible performance. You could feel the energy in that building in a late game situation like that. So I may have gone too long there, but yeah, this was fun.
Good. Yeah, but that just goes to show you how great of a season it was, and that's a thing where it was really memorable. Obviously, like you said, the tops was the tournament, the ATN championship going on the floor. I thought that was amazing. I just loved the whole tournament in itself, and just how all of us, as far as representing VCU, was around, and I just feel like we were at all points in that arena. Y'all were up top, obviously, I was, was in the 108 level. So then, other guys was scattered around, obviously, like Adam, Michael Phillips. Then you got Zach on the floor. I mean, it was so many, it was so many of us just, and it's funny, like how it was us all scattered, and it was fun, just the atmosphere, just being able to, like you said, being able to talk to the players after the game and all that. And then, obviously it was funny. First person who, before I got onto the court, the first person who I embraced was Ryan from the Peppers.
Yep.
First thing we gave each other, saying, like a dap, like a real like celebratory dap, and then just being able to be on the court, like you said, get a little, feel that confetti, and this is cool. And it's like those type of moments, and it's just one of the things where it's just like, I was happy for those guys, because we know, and it's funny thing I thought about it, except about the free throw for Joe. You think about a Dayton game, which was a week prior to that, and not being able to get those free throws when it was needed, and then now to kind of redeem yourself in this moment, and the fact to and redeem yourself in a moment like this where championship was on the line. Well, in a sense for that.
Yeah, you talk about that Dayton game. You could tell that's one of the ones that I forgot to mention, right? Like, even though the game didn't go VCU's way, you could tell the people in the building felt that something was happening. The A10 trophy was in the house. They could have clinched the lone title right there, standing above George Mason for the season. They obviously didn't. But the student section was alive that night, right before spring break. The Peppas were alive. Senior night, that was an incredible night. And then I want to go back to one thing that I didn't mention while I was talking about my favorite moments. Just personally, was being at March Madness, right? Even though VCU didn't get the win, it was so cool to be there, just to stand on that court and be at the tournament in this event that I'd grown up watching and I loved and still do love every single day of my life.
Yeah. And like you said, I remember going at the tournament, and we were talking about like the Dayton loss, and because I didn't go to the Dayton game, but I'd seen the presser because I knew, because I wanted to kind of see how their body language was going to be heading to the tournament.
Yep.
So because I think because that's right, because I was at the women's tournament that night. So anyway, and I said it was the perfect storm for them to win that game, because obviously you look at like that loss there, and you look how Zeb and Joe were at the presser. They were pissed off. Like I've never really seen them in that type of way. Like it was kind of one of those things where it's like it felt like to a point where that fueled them for this. And then you think, fast forward less than 24 hours later, George Mason is having a celebratory with what did they say? What was it? The great what's the thing? They said it was, they want champagne, but it was like grape or one of them. They were celebrating. So I was like, yeah, that should really piss you off, because the simple fact of them celebrating something that, in a sense, like that they shouldn't have celebrated. And I think, and I think that's what ultimately came down. And I think that's what made them being George Mason so special 2 Sundays ago. And I think that's what it ultimately boils down to. But yeah, this season was great. Obviously, like some great moments, especially like you said, I was there with for the Breonte Weber retirement jersey ceremony. That was great, to see his family, kind of see the emotion. And I still even think about the moment when VCU won the 18 in 2015, and he's like limping on the court, like celebrating as well. And that was it. I remember the day, I think it was with January 31st, 2015, when he tore his ACL against Richmond. That was devastating. He was only a few steals away from becoming the all-time leader. And I was like, that was really heartbreaking to think, and then fast forward now 10 years later, for him to have his name in the rafters, I thought that was just, it was great. It was ceremonious, and it was awesome. A lot of it, any other, like as far as obviously that one, obviously George Mason, the regular season game, now that place, man, it was slam packed. Media wise, it was slam packed. Like I felt like everybody, like that George Mason contingent came with them as well. That was the first time where you really seen, like, as far as all that. And then obviously the Richmond blowout. It was crazy because I felt so bad for Chris Mooney, because Chris Mooney came in, in the presser, and I felt for him, and I could tell in his emotion, like it just wasn't his night. He knew it, and it was just really disappointing. But but it was such a memorable season. But we'll cap it off tonight with the final topic of our emergency podcast. What's just your overall thoughts on Ryan Odom departure? Now he's now at the in your neck of the woods, quote unquote, in Charlottesville and with UVA. What's your thoughts on Ryan Odom going to UVA?
Well, it's hard to put into context what his tenure at VCU meant, right? Like, you always know that this wasn't going to be a long-term fit. He was come back to the East Coast from being at Utah State, somewhere that he's loved near and dear to his heart. He even said that, like, being at Utah State, it's something new for him. He never lived on the West Coast before. So he comes back to VCU. He makes the A-10 title game in both of his seasons. The first year as a 5 seed in the A-10 tournament. Second year this year as the 1 seed. Gets to the NCAA tournament, which we talked about. And then loses to BYU in heartbreaking fashion, whether it be because BYU was simply the better team on that day, whether the team and the coaching staff didn't have their mind right in the moment, whether it be because of the altitude in Denver. We'll never know, right? But VCU still without an NCAA tournament win since 2016. So they weren't able to get over the hump in his tenure there. But this was never going to be a long-term hire and a long-term fit. But Ryan Odom always was respectful, and he understood what VCU meant, what the culture meant, and what it took to win in the A-10. And obviously he did a great job of that. This year's team was so much fun to watch. We talked about, they were 15-0 on their home floor at one point. I think they ended the season 15-1. It would have been a perfect start, only the second, or a perfect home record, only the second time in Siegel Center history. Jack Clark, I could go down the line. Joe Bamisile, Max Scholga, A-10 Player of the Year. Just an incredible time. Zeb Jackson, Luke Bamboye, Philip Russell, who I like to call Philip Hustle. Just a great time this season. And I think that most of the VCU fans know and they understand, like, this was going to be it. There was an end goal for Ryan Odom. He achieved that end goal. He is where his heart is. He said in his press conference on Monday that the University of Virginia is the place that he fell in love with basketball. His father, an assistant coach there. His father also a head coach at Wake Forest for a while. But he's where he wants to be. He never talked about VCU as being the end goal for him. He never used the word home or anything concrete in terms of language with VCU. So I really appreciate him for that. And I thank him for all of the memories that he gave this fan base, this great community, this program over the last 2 seasons. I thank him for all the respect that he gave me and the entire media over his 2 years. And I'll remember his 2 seasons at VCU forever.
Yeah. And I echo those sentiments. And it's kind of one of the things where we knew this was going to happen. Obviously, once Tony Bennett retired, and obviously people were talking about this in October, and I just told people, people who talked to me about it, I was like, okay, it's a possibility, but enjoy it. Like, right. It's like everything in life. Like, you just enjoy this ride. I think, and I say even in October, I think we're going to be but VCU is going to be a good team. And just enjoy this year, and just and when that happened, us from the South, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And I think that's where I looked at that approach. Like you said, Ryan, it was great. Like you said, he was great to the media. He was great to me. I seen him at obviously the A-10 championship. He shook my hand. He said, "Hey, thank you for covering the team." And I was like, you know what? Appreciate you, Coach. Thank you for your kind words. And it's just one of the things. And like you said, even wins and loss, he's always there. He'll answer your questions in a very respectful way. The fact that I look at what was another thing that I looked at from Coach Odom, the recall, even in those games, like his recall was really sharp, and I loved how he was able to talk about certain things in the game. He is, and it's just one of the things where you're like, oh man, because that one time I asked him about like his offense, like the offense production one night, and he's like, yeah, I remember when we rolled this play to this, and we did this, and we got clear shots, this, that, and the third. So I was like, his recall was just amazing to me. It was almost just like, and I like those responses. It was like, when I did those videos, I mean, it was really like 2 minutes long. I think I think the quickest answer might have been when I talked about Phil one time, and he was like, "Yeah, Phil's always aggressive." He was like, "Yeah," I was so funny. He's like, "Yeah, Phil's always aggressive every game." He's like, and it's so crazy because he his teammates gets on him, and it's just like, why you being so. And I think that might have been the shortest one. And then even the time he kind of showed emotion, I think you were in there. You were in there when he talked about one of his son's friends that had cancer. Yep. That was one thing it was. And that's one thing where, and because normally from, he really kind of kept it basketball, but to see that kind of emotion, obviously we've seen a lot Monday, but prior to Monday, having that emotion, it's just like, wow, it was such a gut-wrenching story. Because Ben, Phillips asked the question. Was Mike? Uh-huh. Yeah, Michael Phillips asked the question. I thought it was you, Ben, but yeah, it was Michael Phillips. But and that's the thing where you look at it, and then you look at the press conference on Monday. I'm at a point, like you said, that's what he fell in love with the game at UVA.
He's happy. He's really
recall,
happy.
yeah, and his recall of just even that type of stuff, like living not too far from from the Holland family, and sitting with Ralph Sampson and being a ball boy, and then giving water to the opposing team and all that type of stuff. And it's just like one of the things where VCU could have gave him $1 billion. I say that hyperbolically. He would have took the UVA job. Like say that's where
he said belongs, it was not about money, right? He said
yep.
He said he wanted to be at the place where his heart is, and that's in Charlottesville, Virginia, where they don the blue and the orange, and he's happy there. His family's happy there. His father's obviously happy there. I talked to his son Connor Odom today at the press conference. Their entire family is happy there. So wishing them the best of luck and thanking them again for their time at VCU.
Sure. Yeah, and like I said, I definitely appreciate what Coach Odom brought to this program. And like you said, I like I said on my show yesterday, it's only been 2 times that I will root against Ryan Odom. He plays Carolina, and then if he plays VCU. Other than that, 99.9% of the time, I'm gonna root for Ryan Odom. And like you said, it's you can't put a price on that type of happiness. I think Monday really showed me that hey, this is where he belongs. He's gonna be essentially the next Tony Bennett. Not saying he's gonna win a national championship, but he's gonna be what I call a long tenured head coach, where I think you're gonna see him for decades on end. Like this is like his dream job.
Yep.
And
no doubt about it.
Yeah. And I guarantee, like you said, he talked about even when he first moved there, would he ever imagine that he would been here at 50 years old? Yeah. And that's where it's just like you can't, those type of situations, you can't put a price on it. And that's one thing I will always say about that situation. That's where he belongs. And that's the beauty thing about what's going on here at VCU, that VCU has had a track record of having great coaching. And I think now, flipping the page from Ryan Odom now to Phil Martelli Jr. I keep on saying we. I got VCU has a good one. So let me not. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with Phil Martelli, and I'm excited for the Martelli era, right? Like, we don't know who's going to be on the team yet, but just watching some of the game tape from his games and from his teams and from what he did at Bryant and from how he played at St. Joe's, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be so much fun, and VCU fans are going to love it.
Yeah. Next year's going to be fun.
Next
year's going to be fun. Yeah. Next year will definitely be fun. And it's funny. We think, okay, that's almost 7 months away, and it'll be here before you know it. We will blank
quickly,
and
right?
It will.
Still got a Final Four to play and everything,
right.
But it'll be here quickly.
Yeah. I tell you, we'll blank and we'll be at the Black and Gold game, second or third week of October. It'll be like that. So yeah, man. So we'll wrap up our emergency podcast here on Couch Coach Live. Definitely thank you, Ben, for hopping on. So Ben, tell them where they can find you on social media and any upcoming projects, anything that you got going on.
Yeah, so we just wrapped up basketball season, which was obviously really busy, but you can find me on social media on Instagram at benrekosh.media. So that's BENREKOSH.media. On X at Ben_Rekosh. So at BEN_REKOSH. You can find my work on my website. That's my name, benrekosh.com. And yeah, we'll have a ton of great stuff. Podcasts, YouTube videos, bunch of clips on social media coming out soon. So thanks to everybody if you've tuned in, and really appreciate Chris having me on the show.
Yeah, man. Most definitely. I definitely appreciate it. I know I finally took you up on the offer. You said, hey man, if you need me, I'll be come on and on, and yeah, I have you on. We'll be in talks. I put it
Awesome.
that
Yeah, so much fun to be here.
way. So
much fun
yeah,
to be here.
man. So this wraps up episode 334 of our emergency podcast here. As yeah, for sure. All right, so now I want to be problematic at the end. So we'll catch you guys on our next episode. We'll be back Wednesday, and we're out.